Hello and welcome to the special support section of Melee's Turn Wheel. I'm your host, I'm Melee Kirby, and this is where I would normally say the characters that we're talking about today, but I want to save that for a little bit later because for reasons that will become clear. But I hope everyone's having a lovely Easter Sunday. I'm recording this on the morning of Easter Sunday. After I record, I'm gonna go get ready for the day and go down see my family. So that's gonna be nice. If you celebrate, I hope you're having a good day. If not, I just hope you're having a good Sunday. I'm hoping to have this episode out by, before the day's over. After I get back, I can edit it and upload it. But I don't know how realistic that is. Probably within the next couple of days, though, at the very least. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure I got that preamble out of the way. Because I honestly, I wanted to put off talking about these supports for as long as possible because today we're going to be looking at Bartre, Dorcas, Raven, Priscilla, and Lucius from Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade. So I'm just going to come right out and say this at the start. This is, I think, without question, the worst group of characters on average that I have looked at in this podcast so far, with the exception, honestly, maybe not even, but with the exception of the Ostia episode from FE6, which I believe that episode was Lilina, who was good, but then Barth, Bors, Wendy, and Uyghur or OJ were all pretty bad. So that one is maybe I'm not 100% sure where I fall on this episode versus that one. But I was just reading these supports and man, guys, some of these supports are just so fucking bad. I mean, I guess I'll stop beating around the bush and get into it. I think we should start with Dorcas because I think Dorcas is maybe the worst character in the series up to this point. That's not true. There are a couple of 3 characters and FE4 characters that I actively dislike. So I definitely wouldn't say that he's the worst character, but I would go as far as to say that he's the most boring character that we've looked at in this podcast up to this point. I like all these supports are just nothing. They're just absolutely nothing. He supports with Bartre, Geitz, Oswin, Vida, and Farina. And a couple of them are like kind of worth talking about. The Bartre one is like kind of nice for Bartre, so we'll get into that one when we talk about Bartre. The Geitz one, I do want to actually talk about the Geitz one, so we'll save that one for a bit. And then the Farina one is decent as well. The Vida one is literally just the comedy support, and it's like not funny is the problem. Because there are some comedy supports that are like good and I like them. But the problem with this one is that it fails to be funny to me. So I don't have anything to say about that one. And the Oswin support is just fucking nothing as well. I mean, I can talk about a little. Okay, yeah, I guess I can draw blood from the stone a little bit and talk about a couple of these supports. So, I'm skipping the Bartre and Vida ones entirely. I might talk about the Bartre one when I get to Bartre. I'm not sure, but the Oswin one is okay. No, it's bad, but it has like a little bit in there about how, Oswin is asking Dorcas to become a knight, and help, protect, maybe not necessarily, I think he was offering to join up with the Ostia Knights, but I think in general, he's just like, you should consider being a knight and protecting more people. And he's like, no, because I already have the one person I'm trying to protect, and that's enough for me. I don't need any more than that, and that's fine. That's an okay direction to take his character in, I guess. The Geitz support is, I love Geitz, so I think that this one is okay just by extension of Geitz being in there. But essentially the whole thing with Geitz, this requires a little additional context, I guess. The whole thing with Geitz is that his deal is that he's looking for a purpose to his life. He had like a soul searching journey, or a soul redefining realization that he came to, and that sort of like changed his perspective on life, and he's trying to like figure out what he wants to do, who he wants to be, et cetera, et cetera. I really like Geitz. We're going to get to Geitz a little bit down the line. And in this Dorcas support, he's basically asking Dorcas, why are you fighting? And Dorcas's answer is money, which is reasonable. You need money to live. You need money to survive. And it's actually, the support got me thinking, because I'm a big psychology nerd. Not that you need to be a big psychology nerd to know what I'm about to talk about, but most people, I think, wouldn't necessarily jump immediately to this if they're not a psychology nerd. So I'm sure most people are familiar with the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which basically is a pyramid that it describes at the bottom are the things most essential to human survival, and then up at the top are things that if you can get there, that'd be great. That's what most people strive to hit eventually. But the things at the bottom are more important. So at the bottom, you have pink-haired anime girls. We all know this. But then above that is basic physical needs. So food, water, air, shelter, etc. Physical safety, basically just literally being able to do the basic things you need to do to survive. The next up is more metaphysical and abstract concepts of safety. So something like a job, understanding that the concept of okay, I have money, therefore I can feed myself for the foreseeable future, not just right now in the moment I need food, that kind of thing. Third up is being a part of a group, having an identity and feeling like you belong. Then is self-esteem. So feeling feeling a certain way about yourself and feeling good about yourself, basically, not just as a part of a group, but also yourself as an individual. And then at the very top is called self-actualization, which is the concept of finding your purpose, being the best that you can possibly be. It's very abstract and obviously different from person to person. So that's the idea, basically. And the sort of, I guess, theory isn't really the right word, because it is demonstrably true in practice. But the idea is that you cannot pursue the higher levels if you are preoccupied with the bottom levels. So, for example, if you are literally if you do not have a way to if you do not have food and water on a consistent basis, you cannot find a job, or it's much harder to find a job, which is, kind of the cycle, right? Because if you don't have a job and you can't provide for yourself, then it makes it harder to find one. It's a infinite loop, and, fuck capitalism and all that. But, if you don't have a job or, other abstract safety things, then it makes it hard to prioritize being a part of a group. If you're not a part of a group, if you don't know where you fit in with other people, then it's hard to know how to feel about yourself. And then if you don't know how you feel about yourself, then you can't reach your true potential. So that's sort of what the idea is there. And Geitz is on the top of the hierarchy of needs, right? He has lived a pretty privileged life. I mean, right now, he's a mercenary, right? So he does need to work for his survival, and is day by day, making it through just like everybody else. But for a vast majority of his life, it seems like he was doing pretty well for himself. And I don't want to get too into Geitz, but basically my point is that he has had the privilege of being able to think about these things, right? Whereas Dorcas is still sort of at the bottom two rungs, where he's all I care about is making enough money to put food on the table and make sure that my wife is taken care of. That's all he cares about. And he hasn't really stopped to think about anything else, because he doesn't have that luxury at this point. Maybe eventually he will. Now, I just talked about that support for 5 minutes about stuff that's not even in there, because the actual support itself is extremely boring and lame, but it got me thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a cool concept that I like thinking about. So for that reason, that's probably my favorite Dorcas support. And then the last one is Farina, which is just really good for Farina. Yeah, no, this is basically just for Farina. Dorcas doesn't really have anything interesting going on in the support. So yeah, Dorcas is quite possibly the most boring character in all of Fire Emblem. And it's genuinely competitive between him and Wendy for being my least favorite character that I do not actively dislike, if that makes sense. He's just so nothing and boring and lame and forgettable. So I'm just going to move on. I'm sorry if you're a Dorcas fan. He's the funny meme man. Someone did in fact put poison in his mutton, but outside of that, he is just the most nothing blank slate character of all time, and I do not like him. So I am going to move on to talking about Bartre, who also sucks. Okay. I posted on Twitter that I was like really struggling. I said I'm fighting for my life out here when it comes to reading these supports, because these supports are so fucking bad, guys. They're like Bartre, even Bartre. Like, Bartre was not a great character in Binding Blade, but he was like funny. I liked his comedy supports. I liked his interactions with Fur. And there was some stuff to work with there in terms of like his sense of justice, because he was fighting against the corrupt nobles on the Western Isles. Like, there was some stuff they could have done with that. They absolutely didn't in Binding Blade. So that's not like a criticism exclusive to this game. But if you're going to bring a character from the previous game back in this one, then you might as well do something with him. You might as well explore that character a little bit. And you know, maybe I'll have the same complaint about Marcus when we eventually get there. And Merlinus has supports, actually. So I guess we'll talk about Merlinus at some point too. Is that it for characters that got brought back? I think so. Maybe there's like one or two more, but you know, for the most part, that's it. So anyway, these Bartre supports are just not that good. The Dorcas one is like fine for him. Basically, it just shows him being nice towards Dorcas. He wants to unionize with Dorcas, basically, which is based. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. Ellawood, unfortunately tells him that they cannot pay him more, because Ellawood needs to buy really cool and fancy clothes. That's not what he says. I'm getting on my anti-capitalism horse a little bit too much in this episode. Maybe I should tone that back a little bit. But, yeah, Bartre is like, we should go ask Ellawood to pay us more. Because Dorcas, you're not making enough to do what you need to do. And, he goes and talks to Ellawood, and Ellawood hears him out and is genuinely, it seems like he's genuinely like, you know, considering what Bartre has to say, but says unfortunately no, despite the fact that in the Dorcas Farina support, it clearly highlights the fact that, you know, Farina is getting paid like 1 billion times more. So, I don't know. Not a great look for Ellawood, unfortunately. Oh, this support tells us that Dorcas likes painting, which is nice. Good for him. The Bartre Raven support is nice, I guess. Bartre, you know, challenges Raven to a bunch of fights, and Raven like beats him easily. So Bartre gets really insecure. He shows Bartre his like a scroll of his family lineage, which shows that he comes from like a long line of warriors, which is kind of cool. I guess that's a good like addition to his character, that he has like a lineage of warrior ancestors that he's very concerned with. The fact that doesn't come up at all in FE6 is interesting, and I think that, you know, that's not a criticism. I think you could read into that, you know, that absence as being like, okay, well, maybe, you know, he has moved away from that being his top priority. Although he obviously still cares about strength and everything. But it seems like he loves Fur basically unconditionally. So even if she hadn't been a warrior, you know, maybe he wouldn't have minded. I don't know. Unclear. Bartre also convinces Raven to help teach him how to read and write better, which is very cute. And I like that. So that's a good support. That's a decent support. There's the Bartre Canas support, in which Bartre calls Canas Magic Man. And that's pretty funny. He says, right, well, that's all right then. I'm just going to punch that rock over there until my head feels better. Every time Canas starts using big words and giving Bartre a lot of information, Bartre just like his head starts hurting, which is like they play it up as being like he's like a fucking caveman, but he's not. He wasn't that stupid in Binding Blade, I don't think. I don't remember him being that bad, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just remembering badly. Oh, and he convinces Bartre to read a book, or Bartre, after talking with him, says that he wants to read a book, which is like good character development. Nice going, Bartre. Man, I'm really trying here, guys. It's like pulling teeth. I'm skipping the Carla one. The Renault support. Renault is a character that we're not going to see until way later. He's the character, I guess not technically, but he's like one of the last characters to join in the game, second to last. And Renault is like a really popular, cool character that everyone likes, except that this support is garbage and terrible. So I don't know that, and it's pretty bad. Bartre is still funny though. I'm glossing over some of these, but some of these lines in these supports are kind of funny. Like some of the Dorcas lines are pretty funny. Some of the ones in the Canas and Renault supports are pretty funny. Oh, there is a consistent through line actually that I wanted to point out here. He says, okay, so a consistent thing we see with him in this game, and also kind of FE6, is that he's very good at spotting powerful warriors. I mean, like, it's a little bit hard to say that definitively, because, you know, he'll say like, oh, you're a powerful warrior, and if like, okay, they're in a Fire Emblem game, they're a playable character in a Fire Emblem game, they're definitely going to have some combat prowess, right? So there's maybe some sampling bias going on there. But what makes that interesting, and I think kind of makes it like highlights that it's probably intentional, is that he sees through Renault immediately. Renault, without getting too much into his backstory, used to be a fighter, like a physical fighter. Instead, he is now a priest, or a bishop. But Bartre can tell that he's like a strong warrior, or at least used to be. And he kind of downplays his own sense there when he says, you don't fool me, I can spot a true warrior. Why, of the last 10 men I spotted, nearly half were strong warriors. But I honestly think the implication is supposed to be that he is more accurate than he is giving himself credit for. Or maybe it's just a funny coincidence, I don't know. But I like to think that he can just genuinely spot a true strong warrior when he sees one. But that's really the only thing to chew on with basically any of these supports. The Carla one is next, and this is his like sort of, I guess, canon paired ending, because Carla is of course Fur's mother, and she dies of illness after why am I blanking? After Blazing Blade and before Binding Blade, she passes away of an illness. This paired ending is kind of funny because it's like it must be a mistranslation. But it says later Carla died of illness. Bartre took their daughter to her uncle and joined Carla. We know he didn't die though. We know that he survived and lived on to the events of Binding Blade. So I don't know. I mean, I think mistranslation is probably the most likely explanation there. Yeah, I'm really trying. So, I mean, this actual Carla support itself is Bartre fighting Carla, and then saying that he finds her beautiful, and declaring in despair that he is in love. So there's nothing going on here. These guys are two of the worst characters in the game. Bartre is definitely a little bit better because he's like kind of funny and there's like a little bit to chew on there with his supports, whereas Dorcas had basically nothing. But yeah, not really killing it with these ones so far. But next up we have Priscilla, and surely Priscilla, is gonna be a great character, with no supports that make me want to kill myself. Let me just refresh my memory on the Priscilla Raven support. I'll be right back. So I have bad news. This is maybe the worst support I've ever fucking read in my life. So, alright. I'm gonna cut a little bit of the mentality that I've had up to this point, because I've read all the supports going into this. That's definitely what I want to try to do moving forward. In the older SSS episodes, I used to just like read them on the fly and sort of give my live reactions, but I do think it's better if I can read them and give sort of my live reactions, or my formulate my thoughts a little bit better, before actually sitting down in front of the microphone. I'm gonna adjust my volume here a little bit, and I hope I don't make it too quiet, but I was being really loud before, so now hopefully I'm not blowing anyone's eardrums out. But yes, Priscilla is a better character than Dorcas and Bartre. There's a lot to chew on here. There's a lot of interesting things to say, that's for sure. I think Priscilla you can kind of conceptualize as being a character that is defined by loss. I think that's more, I'm making that sound more interesting than it is, and I'm also making it sound more consistently applicable than it is, because not all of her supports are about loss. But if you think about it, right, like Priscilla is a character who, from a young age, lost her original family, her birth family, and has found an adoptive family that cares about her very much. So there's not really like much of a sense of grief there, right? Obviously, like she has a family, it's not like she was abandoned out to nothing. And she has a very rich, noble family as well. So, that comes up in many of her supports. So, but one thing that she did genuinely feel grief and loss over was the loss of her brother, Raymond, who we know as Raven. And yeah, I mean, between that and the loss of her parents, eventually, eventually they do just die. Although information on that is very inconsistent, which we'll talk about. And then, of course, most of her supports end in some form of loss, right? Like either she falls in love with someone that she can't be with, or I mean, that's it basically. Yeah, those are the only two. Okay, let me just go quickly through who she supports with. So there's Raven, Lucius, Urk, Oswin, Sane, Heath, and Guy. Of those, she has explicitly romantic feelings for two of them. As in they have a paired ending where she says that she falls in love with them. I would argue Sane as well, although they don't have a paired ending together, which is kind of weird. But that is, I definitely think that her Sane is like implicitly romantic. And at the end of all of those supports, I'll put an asterisk there, and I'll come back to that. But just for now, at the end of all of those supports, she does eventually have to say goodbye to them because of differences in their station. Now, the reason I said I was going to put an asterisk there is because the Guy ending is actually a mistranslation. In the Heath ending, at least this is based on what I've heard. I haven't done a whole lot of extra research into this, so someone please correct me if I'm wrong about something. But the Heath support is indeed she is not able to. They're not able to be together because of their difference in station, and so he leaves her and we'll meet again someday, that kind of thing. But the Guy support, they actually in the English version of the game, it says the same thing. They weren't able to be together, but in the original Japanese script, they ended up together. They eloped, and she said, fuck my station, I want to be with you. And that's interesting. I don't know, first of all, how they fucked it up that badly. But also I don't know why she would elope with Guy, but not with Heath. So maybe the Heath one is also a mistranslation that I didn't hear about. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's weird. I don't get this at all. Which is why I'm like, this whole concept of her being a character defined by loss is not like super consistent. Especially, we see with the Urk support, they do end up together because they have a similar station, right? Like, Urk is not a noble, but he is the apprentice of the mage general. We find that out later. I wonder if Urk goes to Living Legend, can he talk to Pent? Probably. That's cool. I should try that at some point. Maybe not because I don't think I'm using Urk in either of the playthroughs on them doing, but all right, now I look too quiet. I don't know if that's any better or not. Whatever. Okay. But yeah, let's actually start talking about Priscilla's actual supports, because some of them are quite interesting. So the Raven support, this series, I've said this time and time again, this series has a weird fixation on incest. It's pretty consistent, in most of the early games. I mean, obviously FE4 speaks for itself. FE5 maybe a little bit. It's unclear. There's some a little bit of an implication that Reinhardt and Olwen are weird in that way. But that also is probably just confirmation bias because it happens in so many other games. But 6 has the weird shit with Clarine and Klein. this game, and this game is no exception. This game, the incestuous undertones are like really bad with this one, guys. It's like really. So Priscilla reminds Raven that when they were children, he said, like, "Oh, Priscilla, I'm going to make you my wife one day," which is not inherently wrong. My understanding is that this is like actually a kind of a common thing in I mean, I guess not even just in Japanese culture. I don't remember it happening that much when I was a kid. But it seems you see this a lot in like games and anime, right? Where like a child who has like a close relationship with their like a friend or a sibling, or sometimes you see it sometimes with like girls, like young girls talking to their dads, like I'm gonna be your wife one day, because they don't understand that distinction between romantic love and platonic love, or familial love. They don't, as a kid, you can't really conceptualize that super well. So it's like, oh, why not? What's the difference? I love this person. Why can't they get married? So that's not super weird by itself, like the fact that happened when they were kids, but the fact that Priscilla seems like weirdly still into the idea, is where I start to be like, all right, well, hold on there. And then the support ends not in like obviously explicitly romantic way, but he does say like, you can stay by my side forever, which is not, I mean, if you want to be generous, that is probably not what he means. I don't think that's too much of a stretch to say that he doesn't mean it that way. But combined with what Priscilla said in the C support and her weird fixation on being with him forever because of that promise that he made to her when they were children, I don't know, guys. It makes me uncomfortable. I'm just gonna say that and leave it there. But yes, that is Priscilla Raven. Oh boy, yeah, that is absolutely a support in Fire Emblem: The Blazing Blade. Can you see now why I was like not super thrilled about doing this episode? Because we got two super boring characters and then one really weird character. The Priscilla or Lucius support is actually it's terrible. In my opinion, actually that's not true. There's some stuff here to chew on, but the majority of the support is Priscilla like asking Lucius about Raven, and being like, oh, hey, does he still talk about me? Does he sound like he still wants to marry me? That kind of weird fucking bullshit, that I hate. And then the A support is them kind of bonding over their relationship to House Cornwell. And she has found out that Cornwell was destroyed or whatever. We'll get to that when in more of the Raven supports. Actually, no, we'll get to this in one of her supports. But yeah, not a great support from that one either. The Irk support is them being cute together, and this does end in a romantic ending, which is kind of nice. Good for them, happy for them. But this one doesn't have a whole lot going on other than the fact that Irk makes fun of Sarah a lot, and it's very funny. Despite the fact that she's so obsessed with Raven in some of their other supports, she seems like weirdly into Irk here. She's into like, and this is like, I don't know like what's going on with this, but like every guy that she has a support with, she basically falls in love with, except for Oswin. And I guess Lucius, although she does call Lucius beautiful, so maybe you could see something going on there. But, like, in the Lucius support, she's obsessed with her brother. So, like, all of these supports seem to revolve so much around her being, like, in love with a guy, whether that's Raven or Irk or Guy or, yeah, I get it now. It took me a second to realize that. Heath and then Sane as well, she falls for all these guys, and it's like, I don't know. I just feel like that's kind of lame. Why it feels like she's not allowed to have a character of her own. She just always has to be like fawning over these guys. I don't know. I don't like Priscilla very much. I think she's really lame and boring. Although the Irk support is cute, I will say, like when they want to do her romance well, they do it pretty well. This is the only one that I can think of that's like that though. The three, I guess, romance supports are not like that good. To be honest, we'll skip Oswin for now because that's the only one of her supports that I actually like. I do like her and Sane together because he is like obviously super flirty and trying to be like, oh, you're so beautiful, you can rely on me, I'll be with you for all time. And she's like, she clearly knows he's full of shit, but you can also tell that she kind of likes it. She thinks it's cute. But which is, that's fine. I make fun of Saint a lot for being, like a flirtatious piece of shit. But like, if that's what you're into, go for it. I know a lot of people would love to date Sylvain. So like, it's, if that's what you want, go right ahead. No judgment here. Yeah, but other than that, not a great support. The Heath support is like fine for Heath, but Priscilla doesn't really do anything or say anything interesting. So we're going to skip that one. The guy support is pretty bad for both of them. I mean, I guess it shows that Priscilla is like really preoccupied with healing people, even if the wounds are not very serious. So that's some characterization for her, I guess, but it's very minor and basic. And that's all of her support partners except Oswin. So we'll get into the Oswin support. This is the only one that we're going to dig into, like with any amount of depth. So she actually has met Oswin before, or Oswin has met her because he worked with Cornwell when she was very little, but she was too young to remember. So they talk about that for a little bit. Now, this is the only Priscilla support where we get like a firm idea of what happened to Priscilla's house. And it is not actually very consistent with what we find out from the Raven supports later on. So it's possible that, it could just be bad translation. It could just be bad writing. If you wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt, it's also possible that Raven, like Oswin, is just lying to Priscilla, or maybe not even necessarily lying, but that he doesn't know the full story and is just only telling her what she has heard, or what he has heard. So, yeah, what we find out here is that Priscilla's family was accused of stealing funds from, like, embezzling funds from people. I don't know the full mechanics of it. But that they were stripped of their title because of that. The reason that they did this was because I guess Raven's dad and Priscilla's dad was just so nice. He was such a cool dude that he was like, yeah, we'll take on all your debt. Don't worry about it. And then when it came time to pay it off, he just didn't have any money. So they had to steal money. But apparently they also stole more than what they needed, which doesn't make any sense to me. But I don't know. But after they got stripped of their rank and their peerage, they killed themselves, basically. So that's the story as we hear from Oswin. Pretty sad, honestly. I don't really get, like supposedly if what Oswin's saying is true, they stole more than what they owed, then I don't know why they did that if they were supposedly so nice. But I don't know. I feel like this entire thing is just a mess of. I feel it in my bones that this is just like a mess of mistranslations. So we'll revisit this when we talk about Raven, who we're actually going to be talking about next. But for now, that's what we get. Priscilla is like a fine. No, she's not. She's really bad and boring. I don't know why I keep trying to say like, oh, they're fine, they're okay. I don't like Priscilla. I think she is really bad and boring. She's not a very good character. All of her supports are very basic. Do not really do a lot to flesh out or make her character more interesting. And she falls in love in all of them, which is kind of lame. I don't really like when female characters are just like, I don't want to say she's an accessory to the male characters because like most of the time the writing is just bad on both ends. But the fact that she has to fall in love with the guy in almost all of her supports is like, I don't know. It just makes me feel icky. I don't like it. All right. Raven is up next. Raven supports with 5 people. I don't think I said who Bartre supported with, but don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. I didn't go through the full list at the beginning, but you can hear, as I go through the supports one by one, you can hear who he is. Supports with. So Raven supports with Lucius, Priscilla, Rebecca, Will, and Bartre. We've actually talked about most of these. The only ones we haven't seen so far are Lucius and Rebecca. So we'll quickly go through the three that we have seen already. I do like the Will support. I think it's more interesting for Will than it is for Raven. I think a consistent theme of Raven's character, and we're getting into the character, I wanted to roughly order this from least favorite to favorite. I don't love Raven. I don't think Raven's a great character, but I do think he's decent. And a pretty consistent theme that I'm seeing through all of his supports is that he's actually a lot nicer than he pretends to be. Kind of in a situation like Ray, right, where he has this sort of eternal scowl. He has like resting angry face, a resting furious face. And people get the wrong impression about him, and he puts on very much this persona of being like an edgy guy. But at his core, in his heart, he is a nice, honest person. And we see that come through in the Will support. We see it come through in the Bartre support. I talked a little bit about this for Bartre, but Raven, just putting up with Bartre is like honestly really funny. And the fact that Raven's like, yeah, sure, fine, I'll teach you how to read and write. I mean, he doesn't fully agree to it, but he just doesn't immediately shut Bartre down either. Is cute, is cool and cute. I like it. The Rebecca support, I like this one a lot, and I really wish that he was a potential romance option for her, because Rebecca just like openly flirts with him, and it's really funny. She's just like, yeah, man, you wanna what did she say? Well, at the end, when he leaves, he's kind of being a jerk to her. But no, he's helping her. He's being nice to her and helping her, but doing it in a very callous, Raven sort of way. Rebecca says, scary, but maybe not all that bad inside. Sure liked what I saw on the outside, teehee, which is funny. She cooks him food. It's stereotypes aside, I still think it's kind of cute. And then she calls him handsome in the A support, and then talks a little bit about her brother. And Raven kind of, I don't know if he's doing it on purpose, but he kind of flirts back with her and says her brother left and hasn't written her in a while, and she's like, I guess he just forgot about me. And Raven said he could never forget about you. You're like unforgettable. Which is, I don't know, that's nice. I wish that they were a romantic pair together. I think they're cute. The Priscilla one is all sorts of fucked up. I'm not going to touch that with the 10-foot pole again. So those are those are all the ones other than the Lucius support. Now, the Lucius support is actually quite good. I'm a fan of this support. And it's also the basis for a lot of ships. A lot of people ship Raven and Lucius, which is I get it. Trust me, the support definitely has some undertones where I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see it for sure. They do even have a paired ending. It is supposedly a platonic paired ending, but in the same way that Ike at the end of Radiant Dawn has a paired ending with Ranulf or Soren. It's like, all right, yeah, they're best friends. They're best friends and also roommates, and they live together forever. It's crazy. Anyway, the actual support itself is pretty good. Basically, it's just Lucius trying to talk Raven off of the path of revenge. And what's interesting is that in the A support is not where he successfully does it. He convinces Raven to leave the revenge alone in the B support. And then the A support is the aftermath of that, which is really cool. Now, this A support is where the other inconsistent information on what happened to House Cornwall came in. So I'm going to quickly read out this support in its entirety, or at least the part that matters, the parts that matter for what I'm talking about here. And you guys will see what I mean. Okay, so yeah, it's not quite the beginning, but pretty early on, Raven says, "Good to hear, Lucius. There's something I would like to ask you." "What, my lord?" "Uther, Lord of Ostia, brought House Cornwall down, killed my parents. Do you believe this to be true?" "I know the Marquess was killed by someone. There can be no mistaking that. But as to whether it was the Lord of Ostia, I have my doubts." "Yes, I was so distraught at the time. I believed the rumors without question, without doubt. I truly did not care whether the Lord of Ostia was guilty or not. I merely wanted to find a victim for the rage inside me. That I can understand. And you were right there all along. I should have tried to understand. Lord Raymond." Meeting Ellawood really opened my eyes. I know that the Marquess of Ostia is not behind the attack now. Someday, yes, someday when this war is over, I'll go searching for the truth, and I'll pay Ostia back for my suspicion in full. Excellent. Except I want you to stay home. What? You are too cruel. Why? I want someone to... See, this is what I'm talking about, right? They're roommates and best friends. I want someone to go home to, you see. So go back and wait. Why don't you marry? Then there would be someone at home, and I could journey with you. I need no bride to jabber at me. There's enough jabbering going on around here already. What's that supposed to mean? My case in point. Wait, Lord Raymond. So yeah, cute support there. Okay, yeah, no, this is what I was thinking of. So yeah, I don't get what's going on here, regarding House Cornwell, because now, according to Lucius, it was like a murder and an attack. That's what Raven says. It was an attack. So the story that Oswin told Priscilla and the story that we're hearing from Lucius and Raven is at best like they could theoretically have both happened if they lost their peerage and then maybe were attacked afterwards and their attack was made to look like a suicide. That's like the only way that these can both be true. But I part of me thinks that this is a translation issue. I don't know what else it could be. I mean, again, other than what I just described. But Lucius seems pretty confident that he was that it was a murder. So I don't know what the fuck that's about. But yeah, we never find out the answer to this. We find out nothing about House Cornwell. It never comes up in, obviously it doesn't come up in FE6 because Cornwell didn't exist in FE6. That's not, it's not fair to criticize FE6 for that. But if you're going to make a story, like a big, like subplot for a character about like finding the truth about something, and it just never comes up ever again, that's kind of weird. I don't know. Even their paired ending doesn't say anything about them figuring out the truth of Cornwell. So I don't know what's going on there. It's kind of a mess. And I don't think it's that well written, to be honest. But Raven's like a fine character. I think he is at his best when he's just being nice to people. And I think the fact that Lucius is able to talk him out of his path of revenge, in two supports instead of requiring the whole chain, I think is indicative of the fact that Raven is like kind of a nice guy, deep down. And then also they definitely get married, and have lots of gay sex. So that's always good as well. I love to see that. All right. And finally, Lucius. Now, Lucius, is the only character in this episode that I would actually consider good. And that's why I think this probably clears the Ostia episode, because I liked Lilina well enough, but I didn't think she was great. Whereas I actually don't think Lucius is that great either, but he's pretty good. I like him. So I'm not sure where I would fall on that spectrum, I guess, but we shall see. Anyway, the Lucius supports with 5 people: Raven, Priscilla, Sarah, Renault, and Corell. We've already seen 2 of these. The Raven support is pretty good. I really like Lucius in the support because he's generally like a pretty like meek guy. He's very passive. He tends to be the one letting other people soundboard off of him. Whereas in this support with Raven, he like really puts his foot down and says, I will speak my mind. You will listen to me. And that's cool. I think it shows off another side of Lucius really well that I liked seeing a lot. The Priscilla support, he doesn't really do anything for Lucius's character other than like, I guess, reiterate his loyalty to House Cornwell, which is neat. The Sarah support is good, especially for Sarah. And we're going to talk about it a lot when we get to the Sarah SSS episode. I actually want to gloss over it for now, both because it's like not that interesting, for Lucius. We find out that he was born in an orphanage, I think, right? Let me just, double check. Yeah, it's dedicated mostly to Sarah freaking out over the fact that like she's learning that he's a guy, which is kind of funny. So he grew up in an orphanage, which ties into his backstory, which we'll learn more about from the Renault support. We'll save that one for last because it's like the best one probably. And yeah, that's really all we know. The Sarah half of the support is interesting, but we'll get to that another time. The Corell support, is funny because Corell is like the most like genuinely psychotic, edgy guy in all fiction. He loves killing and blood and talking about killing, and he's just like so comically over the top in his edginess. It's funny. And then meanwhile, Lucius is like a priest who, who preaches nonviolence or whatever. I guess he doesn't preach nonviolence because he does explicitly fight as well, but I think this one is more. I don't know if symbolic is the right word, but I think Carell finds some level of peace in Lucius. In the ace support, he talks about feeling calm. And I think when he's around Lucius, Carell starts to like his intense feelings of like being this power hungry and being this like kill hungry takes a toll on you emotionally, and Carell doesn't really let that show most of the time, but with Lucius he is able to let it peek through a little bit. And I think he takes a nap with Lucius or something like he takes a nap like near Lucius, and I don't know if that's like literally what's going on. I read it more as being like, I don't know, in the same way that a short story kind of encapsulates ideas in like maybe weird and not exactly completely literal ways. This is kind of how I feel about the support, where it's like, I think the idea being communicated that Lucius brings out a side of Carell that doesn't necessarily get to show itself very often is good, and I think that the way that's being conveyed is it feels very abstract, I guess. I don't know if I'm wording this properly, and I'm probably just wrong anyway, but I don't know. I like it. It's not fantastic, but I like it. It's kind of weird if you like look at it literally, but I think if you don't look at it literally, then it's nice. And then there's the only one we haven't. Wait, was that all of them? No, the Renault one. Okay, yeah. So the Renault support is really cool. Basically, I mentioned in the Bartre Renault support that Renault used to be like a fighter. We find out in this support that Renault used to be, he was a mercenary, and when we get into all of the Renault stuff in a much later SSS episode, we'll do like the full context of like what's going on with Renault. I'm going to skip over sort of the details right now. But basically, Renault used to be a mercenary and killed Lucius's father. And that's why he was, Lucius was raised in an orphanage. It takes them a little while to get there. I actually, let me back up a little bit actually, because the C support is pretty good as well. It's unclear exactly what is happening in the C support, but my thought, and it is a little bit inconsistent with what we see later in the support, but the way that they're describing, like Lucius is having like he's basically having a panic attack, and he describes it as a sickness of the soul, which is kind of weird until you realize that, yeah, like in a medieval culture, that is kind of how they would probably conceive of mental illness, right? Is like your soul is sick. There's nothing physically wrong with you, but you're having a panic attack or you're having a depressive episode, right? Like that, they would see that as being like reflective of what's on the inside. And I think that's like a neat framing. But yeah, I guess Lucius is having a panic attack, which doesn't come up anywhere else, I don't think, unless I glossed over it in one of the other supports. But I guess he just has anxiety. I don't know. But yes, in the B support, that's where Raven was, or when Lucius is like, yeah, no, I had to live in an orphanage because some mercenary killed my father when I was very young. And Renault is like, oh, shit, that's me. And then the A support is sort of where they work through that. Basically, Lucius has a panic attack because he doesn't understand why Renault is like avoiding him. And then he kind of like he passes, like he lays down and then seems to fall asleep. And then Renault is like basically talking to himself, saying, "I'm sorry, I'm the guy who killed your dad. Back in those days, I was so like power hungry or whatever." Again, we'll get into all this with Renault another time. But it turns out Lucius wasn't asleep and heard the whole thing. And they have this nice scene where he's like, "I forgive you." He can feel Renault's like grief and regret over what he's done. And I think that's just like a really cool moment for the both of them. The fact that Lucius doesn't even have to hesitate because he can feel sort of what's going on in Renault's heart, I think is cool. It's Lucius is an interesting character. You have this through line with him where he can really like read and I guess bring out what other people are feeling, and sort of almost feel that as like himself, which is neat. They don't really do a whole lot with that in all of his supports, but they do in several with the Corel support. I think you can argue a little bit in the Raven support, although that's also probably just because they know each other so well. Yeah, it's a neat idea. I like Lucius. I don't love Lucius, but I do like him. One thing I did want to mention here, though, before we wrap up the episode, because Lucius is our last character. Lucius, if he doesn't get a paired ending, if he just gets his normal neutral ending, we find out that Lucius is the character from FE6 who Ray, Lou, and Chad referred to as father, or at least that seems to be the case, because we find out that he founded an orphanage in Arafen, which is where we meet Chad and Lou in that game. I also mentioned during the Lin Mode episodes that Arafen was a invention for FE7, or at least I thought it was, which is not true, because that's actually where Hector dies in FE6. So, yeah, just wanted to make sure I corrected that. But yeah, the fact that Lucius is that character, and of course we know eventually he does die by being attacked by burned soldiers. It's quite sad, but I think at the very least we can say that he died doing what he loved, and living the life that he wanted to live, which is I think that's what Lucius would want. I think we gave Lucius the choice, like you could die. If you do this, if you make this orphanage for children, and give them a happy, successful life, you'll die at like age 40 or whatever. He'd be like, all right, yeah, cool, bet, let me do it. I don't know. Overall, really bad set of characters this time around. Bartre and Dorcas are like terrible. Priscilla's also pretty bad. I think probably about the same level as those, although I do like her a little bit more, I think. And then Raven's solid. Raven's like fine. And then Lucius I like. So, overall a pretty rough set of characters. But the good news is that I am done with, like, for at least a while. I think I'm basically done with like the bad characters. I'm looking at the next SSS episode, which is going to be on Matthew, Guy, Merlinus, and Hawkeye, which seems like a random smattering of characters, but I don't really have a better place to put most of them. So, that's what we're going to do. And I remember liking most of those characters, but we'll see. Maybe I'll change my mind. Guy in particular, some of his supports are like kinda whatever that we've read so far. So, I guess we'll see. All right. I don't think I have anything else to say. I guess, I said this explicitly many times, but in case you needed me to spell it out one more time, my favorite character from this episode was, of course, Lucius, and not close, not even close. But yeah, other than that, I can't really think of anything else to add here. So if you have anything that you want to say about these characters, please feel free to tweet at me, at IMAMeleeKirby on Twitter, or email terminalpodcast@gmail.com. And let me know if you are like a big Bartre stan and you want me to know about it. Yeah, that's all that I have. So, I hope you all have a nice rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.